Good afternoon, and welcome back to Threat Watch, where Fred Langston and I are going to talk for 15 minutes or so about some things that happened this week and see if they make sense to us, and see if they make sense to you. You can be the judge of that. I just got back from Scottsdale, Fred, and I can tell you, I have lived in the Pacific Northwest for so long that my eyes do not take sunlight anymore. Next week, are you going out to ASIS with me in Spokane?
Certainly am. Yeah, Grand Old Davenport Hotel. Love that
Yep.
place. Yeah.
Also insanely bright light out there. It turns out that Eastern Washington really is a lot like Oklahoma. And I say
I
that
lived there
because I'm
5
from
years.
Oklahoma. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. You went to grad school out there.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. All right, so let's talk about some of these things. This thing about 26,000 discussions on dark web forums about hacking financial organizations. So if you're watching this, take this as threat intelligence if you're in banking or fintech or crypto or whatever, including like family offices, right? People that handle investments, invest in companies and things like that. Um, that's a lot of chatter, man. What do you make of this?
Well, I think part of it is the rise of kind of the info stealer approach and methodology. We've gotten a place to where it's not just grab your password. They know how to sit in particular applications that are highly targeted to particular individuals, and then will sit and look for exactly the information they're looking for, like a Bitcoin wallet piece of information. So that has pushed this to where, again, we're democratizing kind of this kind of crime, which is actually much more lucrative than some of the lower level democratized crime. And then the probably the most significant development this year is the rise of one-time password bots, which is these
Yeah.
underground services operated via Telegram. And it basically allows them, when they finally do get a hit on a password stuffing attack, that it automates the attack portion of getting past your two-factor authentication. So those things put together, I think, are really driving the technology part. But the other half of this is it's cryptocurrency, and if you've heard me talk for the last 20 years, I think that is one of the main drivers for cybercrime. It's
Yeah.
made it. It is the underpinnings of a cybercrime economy. Is things like cryptocurrency. I'm not trying to rain on that parade, but we're tying our monetary system now, even officially,
Yeah.
to these assets, and that just allows everybody to be more at risk by stealing everything you have by getting one Bitcoin wallet or one account that has everything in it. So very scary time.
Yeah, well, I think it's because too, cryptocurrency is largely unregulated now, right? It's really wild, wild west. And I don't think the current administration has a lot of appetite for regulating that. There are reasons why, some things do need to keep secret, I guess. But 26,000 discussions. First of all, how did they measure this? Okay. But to your point about the democratization, I think it's because the population of threat actors has gone way up, right? There's this as a service model now and all these tools that are so easy to use. You don't need skills anymore. And there's a lot of money being made here. And, that's a real attractant for people to get into this, especially if the barrier to entry is so low, which brings up an interesting point. We look at Russian GDP and we all poo poo, right? Our GDP is something like $24 trillion dollars, at least last time they measured it. And theirs is like a third of that. But that's not counting all the stolen funds, right? And that has the potential, I think, to double that. And I would say too that, just as an aside, I don't think Elon Musk is the richest guy in the world. I think Putin is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's another good article this week, and I don't know if you read this one. It's about the Russian-speaking cyber criminal underground. That article is worth reading in its entirety. I picked the money quote, right, because I got to pick the shortest amount possible that will describe it for the news blast. Um, about how they're changing focus, but reading about this culture of secrecy and specifically how it hinges on reputation so much, right?
Yeah.
You have to be very slowly vetted into this thing. So if you're in part of these cybercrime organizations that are doing this as a service model, all of a sudden they've got all these applicants that want to be in here, and they're managing all the vetting of this. And at some point, there's going to be people that penetrate these organizations, and we probably already have. And that's all going to turn at some point.
Well,
I don't know whether or not we're in there or not, but they're working on it.
one of the other ironies is this week, the Russian government took down a cybercrime gang. And everybody that talks about it
Took
says,
down.
yeah, exactly. Well, they also say this was a punishment of that gang by not playing by the Russian government rules
That's
or
right.
whatever, guardrails they put up. They went over them, and that's what this was about. It was not anything about cybercrime ending it. It was about get back in where stay in your lane is what
Yeah.
it was about. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So more to come on this because, and again, this is threat intelligence. If you were in the finance sector, be aware of this. Info stealers. Read up on that. Okay, number two, let's talk about, you better alert HR because remote job seekers are pretty suspect. And right now there's hiring still going on for remote roles. And I know a lot of those are in startups. There's two articles here. Fake job seekers are flooding U.S. companies that are hiring for remote positions. And there's another one by a guy who claims he's a security expert. And by the way, don't ever do that. Don't ever say I'm a security expert. Who almost fell for, a North Korea style deepfake job applicant twice. So, you're more of a mind that these guys are all in the Fortune 500, aren't you?
Yeah, so this is you see this coming. We knew this was coming. The question is, how fast will they get really good at it? Just like fishing, right? The first
Mhm.
ones were barely legible English sometimes, right? Now they look exactly like they came from, within your own company. So they're going to be able to capture, you and I. Do you know how many samples there are of you and I's? You're in my face and
We're creating
voice.
one right now.
Exactly. I mean, we are trivially easy to take and create a deep fake around. So it's trivially easy for these people to create these personas that apparently, because we live in a world where we work remote. My team works remote. We're out all over the world, frankly. So yeah, it's hard to really say that somebody that you're trying to hire that you think, lives in Chicago, is actually a deep fake from North Korea, right?
Yeah.
So, uh, who needs to learn? Who needs to figure this out? Well, I think it means we're maybe not vetting our applicants well enough, or maybe these automated applicant tracking systems are basically easy to fool with an AI
Hmm.
resume that then gets you the AI deep fake interview, right? I mean, that's kind of where it seems like it's headed.
Yeah. What did you see what the guy said about how the camera was glitchy and the
Yeah,
person didn't look like a real person, right?
yeah,
So like you say, right, just like the fishing where it was clearly screwed up, grammar. Um, this is probably the nascent part of this, and it's going to get so good that it's really going to be hard to avoid it unless you, like you say, you have other controls in place, like figuring out if a resume was written by AI and maybe even which AI, I don't know. Um, so you you got to wonder too, what's the motivation here? Okay, because if it's North Korea, they're probably going to steal your money, right? I'm not sure that they care so much about intellectual property or espionage, right? Because we're talking about corporations. If it's Chinese, they're mostly after secrets. I'm not sure Russians have been engaging in this the way the North Koreans have, but that's probably only a question of time too. Then it's either financial gain or disruption.
yeah.
We're starting to really be able to draw lines around who is likely to do what.
Uh,
Um, and so all I can say is it's a good thing our energy and water sectors don't use remote workers.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because uh, it's time that we actually start considering global conflict as a real threat. And we know
Stories
those
are coming out.
outcomes, right? Those outcomes are very different than what we're used to, with a business email compromise, right? This is attacks against infrastructure. So I think your next article big there's big red, lights flashing that we need to secure critical infrastructure. So
Yeah. Over half of attacks on electricity and water firms are destructive. Okay, that really gets your attention. I mean, it's not that hard to interpret, right? They're coming after our infrastructure. The FBI and CISA have warned time after time after time. They're in our infrastructure. You know, China invades Taiwan. We go to help the Taiwanese, and boom, the lights go out. Okay, but we know it's been occurring in Ukraine. But this is more now it's starting to hit in the UK and the US. All right. So 62% said they suffered a cyber attack in the past year. Okay, that's not surprising. 80% were hit multiple times. Okay, that's disturbing. 59% attack was disrupted operations, and 54% said permanent corruption or destruction. Okay. So over half of these, they're not looking to disable you, to extort you. They just want to wipe you out. All right. You know, this is why we're trying to go into the water sector right now. We're
absolutely.
working with another company that's doing, we can't name them, but they're doing oil and gas extraction, and they transport that via pipelines and stuff. This stuff is getting more and more and more important, right? Viruses in, your credit union are always going to be there, but we are moving into this new area.
Yeah. I mean, water, we've been, helping the water sector for a long time because
Yep.
we've realized how critical it is, not just for drinking, water, but think about the data center use. They think in the modern era, the water, one of the main water usages will be cooling data centers,
Yep.
right? Especially with an AI world we're building, the demand of water is enormous, right? If you control that, not only are people not going to be able to drink, but we're going to be shutting down, critical systems that are running our, tech-enabled world. So there's a lot more behind, these kinds of attacks as just being, hey, I turn on the faucet and nothing's coming out, right? This is, literally shutting down our society. So, I mean, we're going to be doing a tabletop for a regional
Yeah.
tabletop for water systems here in the Pacific Northwest in, I think, a month or two. Just to get them ready for this kind of thing. They've got to be ready. The good news is we've seen better awareness, or the awareness has risen faster in the water industry than almost any other critical infrastructure. They've kind of gone from 0 to 60 in the last 4 or 5 years. So
Yeah.
as long as they keep that foot on the pedal, maybe we can not put a dent in this problem.
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, let's me and you keep trying to get in front of this, I guess.
Yeah.
But this is the thing always I come back to. So there's water, there's drinking water, and yes, all these data centers are being built to service, all the AI stuff and blah blah blah. And a lot of those are being built in places that don't have a lot of water. Okay, so that's okay. Legislators, you're going to have to deal with that. But remember, water also includes waste treatment. Okay, that's part of the water sector. And you knock down a treatment plant, 3 days later, you've got a really bad public health emergency. And with the new executive order that says, okay, things like that are all going to be handled by state and local government, right? It's not going to be FEMA at your service anymore. That makes that much scarier.
Yeah.
I just don't know how stuff like that is really going to get handled when it happens, because I think it's a when.
Yeah. I can only roll my eyes about how we're supposed to move forward in the current world. But
Yeah.
we'll have to do our part, right? So knowing that we have to do our part, and it is getting late, Mike, is there anything
Okay.
you can leave us on a something that's going to put a smile on our faces, maybe?
I don't think this will make you smile. I think this will.
Okay.
I think you will agree with me. Um,
Okay.
so we know there's a lot of suspicion, right, about technology that's produced in China, and whether or not it has malign intent or capabilities. Some of that is pretty well founded, right, and some of that's on the hyperbolic side. This one is backed up by research, the kind that our technical testing team does. And so if you think of the worst case scenario, this one's pretty aligned with a Terminator type future, right? So hackers could unleash chaos through backdoor and China-made robot dogs. Okay, first of all, I love that headline. I love that. So they're saying that anybody with there's a robot dog made in China, and I don't know what it's supposed to do, but apparently anybody with access to the API key can access all robot dogs on the tunnel network, remotely control them, turn on their vision cameras to see through their eyes or make it do stuff, right? Now, isn't that essentially the plot of the Will Smith film I, Robot? Right? This is totally engineering imitating art. It's, right? All the robot dogs all of a sudden turn on us. Okay, all right, this is not funny. All right, maybe
Okay.
this does make people smile. I don't know.
Okay.
All right, that's it. Sign up for the daily InfoSec Insider News Blast. Watch our site for events. Free security awareness training last Friday of the month. See everybody next week in Spokane. See you, Fred. Have a good weekend.
All right. You do. See you,
All right.
everybody.